Splash. Sorry,
Oga is complaining. That's what
the OBS crash. The OBS crash.
And I have very interesting guest here to do. Let me start with you. All right.
Nathaniel Nogu, good to be here.
And my name is Emmanuel Tiavia.
And of course, this program is to look at what the papers are saying, the headlines, and look at different perspectives that comes into the headlines. And let me begin with you, Emmanuel Tiavia. Throughout the week, what has been running in your mind looking at the papers?
Well, a lot of stories have made the headlines, Benjamin, and most prominent are issues that have to do with the rising cost of commodities and groceries in our country, and as well some comings and goings in Abuja that I'm sure will be reflected in the national dailies that we are going to go through this afternoon.
When you say coming and going, so
well, I'm not precisely what you are thinking of.
I wasn't thinking about anything anyway.
Just doings.
Okay. Okay. Now, what throughout the course, or perhaps from Monday up to this moment, what has been on your mind?
Well, you see in Nigeria, there's no day you wake up and there are no issues of debate. Currently, the issue of national minimum wage has continued to generate the interest of Nigerians. And of course, within the week, the National Bureau of Statistics read out statistics of the rising inflation since May. And Nigerians have been analyzing the President's Democracy Day broadcast and several issues bordering on security across the country, quite a number of issues, economy, and all of that have been talking points during the week. And so I'm sure as we go through the papers, most of this will get the highlights in some of the national dailies.
Okay, let's begin. Let's begin with the first paper. Just to remind you that iGate Television or iGate Radio, there's a paper. We also have a newspaper here, iGate Newspaper. And that's a paper to begin with. Very interesting. But before we go into that, let's to remind you that you can follow us on all our social media handle to get to watch us and listen to us what we're doing here. Our YouTube handle is iGate_TV, and our Facebook iGate/TV as well, and Twitter as well, iGate TV. And you can listen and watch us as well on iGate, www.iGateRadioTV.com. But let's go with the news first paper, iGate Newspaper, and let's see what we have there. Okay, there you see it on your screen, and the bold headline there says court orders substituted service on Benue probe. And if you look at that very well, just above the name plate you have ICTM matriculates 165 in 9 departments, and lopsided projects. Benue Group calls for fair allocation. And again, just beside that, you have Benue targets 2030 to end HIV and AIDS pandemic. Let me allow some.
I would like to react to the story about ICTM matriculating about 165 students. For those who were there at the event, I remember Agate Radio and TV, we did broadcast the matriculation of students at the maiden matriculation, 165 students for a polytechnic with a difference. For those who don't know, ICTM is Intercontinental College of Technology, Makudi, in 9 accredited departments. And it's not just a polytechnic that you attend to get a certificate. You also get what the Gen Z is called certificate. You go there, you are educated, and you also acquire a skill. And for a school that just started at the beginning of this year, accredited, having 165 students, I think it's a noble develelmaking. There are a lot of departments there that are skill inclined, like, you know, you can learn tailoring, you can learn shoemaking, you can learn bead making, you can learn printing technology, you can learn even accountancy. I think at the event, there is a department that had only 1 student, a very funny incident, and everybody applauded for the young man for being the lone student in that very department. But it's a very affordable place to, you know, acquire skill, not just certificates.
Okay, just bring back the paper, and then you see that the political angle of the headlines there says, "We have not suspended State Publicity Secretary," PDP chairman saying that. Just below, at the bottom of the paper, you have many injured as armed herdsmen attack Benue livestock guard offices.
And I think this is what strikes my interest, especially. Let me begin with a banner headline on that paper: Court orders substituted service on Benue Pro Panel. I think the question of successors coming into office and wanting to probe their predecessors have been a recurring issue in Nigerian politics. And of course, here in Benue State, the present administration led by Governor Hyacinth Alia, when it came aboard, it constituted and inaugurated pro panels, which the former governor, Samuel Tom, actually accepted and welcomed the pro panel, that he was willing to submit to the pro panels within the confines of law. But as the events continue to unfold, of course, this story, as we scan through it, the former governor is arguing that he had actually submitted his documents as mandated by the Constitution to the State Auditor General, who also forwarded them to the State Assembly, and all these were validated as a record. So there is no reason why such pro panels should be coming up. I think it appears like an issue of trying to victimize or looking up for witch hunt in the situation. So we'll continue to see how it unfolds. We look forward that the right thing within the confines of the law should be done, because, of course, if a former executive had gone through the processes as spelled out by the Constitution to have his accounts audited, I see no reason why an incoming or a new administration should set up pro panels to look into such records, especially if it has gone through the State Auditor General as well as the State Assembly. But back again, I would like to comment on the other story: many injured as armed herdsmen attack Benue livestock guards. The issue of insecurity in Benue has been a source of concern. And of course, if you listen to what Benue people and Nigerians have been saying, this administration coming on board, they may have been rated as performing well in other areas. But the issue of insecurity is one issue that will remain an albatross, especially if not properly handled. Because if we are still having issues of herdsmen attacking communities, Livestock Guard is one of the local community outfits there in the state, helping to bring the situation under control in communities. And to think that they're also coming under attack, it calls for concern. But we hope that the administration should be able to find an enduring solution to
and
the issue of
Nat,
insecurity.
just to join the bandwagon of your thought train, when farmers are not safe, it leads to shortage of food supply. And when food supply is shortened, coupled with the present economic comings and goings, the phrase that Benjamin likes so much, you would have heightened food inflation. You know, there is inflation in other sectors, but the one that affects everybody is food. And when food inflation occurs, the food basket of the nation will become the greatest victims of it, because we survive and are sustained by food. So it brings to bear the fact that solving the security situation of this state is almost the biggest and most important thing that any governor can do. Coincidentally, at the federal level, the lawmakers are, accepting our own open grazing law. So no one should be seen to ignore a law that the people themselves brought upon themselves. And rather, any successive administration should be seen to be promoting that which is of great interest to Benue and Benue people and Nigerians
And
in
of
general.
course, you are right, because if we must sustain the status of Benue as a food basket of the nation, especially at the time Nigeria is grappling with the challenge of food insecurity, then this issue of armed herders attacking farming communities needs to be decisively dealt with.
Before we go, just above the nameplate of iGate News, there is what the newspaper, if you can see on the screen there, it says lopsided projects. Benue Group calls for a fair allocation. This is one thing. Perhaps the people in Zone C also have been asking for this. The project should be evenly distributed to the 3 zones we have in the state, so A, B, and C. And another thing of health there, important there, Benue targets 2030 to end HIV and AIDS pandemic. Do they have the structures? And how are they going to end this? It's a big question to ask. 2030, it's sounding like the something that is not going to come, it will not come to pass.
And of course, that story is a bit interesting, because if you look at it, the previous people have argued that sometimes the figures of HIV and AIDS pandemic in Benue are overbloated just for concerns to attract international donors to speak to the issue. But if Benue is setting itself for a target of 2030 to end the issue, of course, it should be fine. Whether they have the structures or not, they have set a target. Let's hope that they should be able to activate the structures to work within this target of 2030 to end.
I'm sure that for those who are readers, go to the vendor, grab a copy of the newspaper, you get the details of that story.
Yeah, but my own concern is looking at the word "end." Very difficult. How do we define "end" in this particular instance? Are we going to end?
I think we reported, the editors reported the statement.
Okay.
As it was made.
Okay.
But I think the adjective that the person wanted to use was maybe manage or ameliorate.
Yeah.
Or
Or
curb.
curtail, spread or
Well,
something like
an
that.
abundance of adjectives on this morning's headline review.
But above all, it still speaks to the reality that our people need to cultivate certain habits that are safe to keep them away from. Because as far as we are concerned, a cure has not been yet found to the concern
Prevention
of
is
HIV.
better than cure
So,
anyway.
just for people to adopt health habits that are keeping them away. Prevention is better than cure, if I should borrow.
So
your
the
words.
target and part of the target should be sensitization, as you rightly said.
And of course,
massive.
the present administration seems to be speaking well of what they are doing in the health sector. So if they are setting a target, I can see the commissioners are pictured there, Dr. Yamal Otesi, the Commissioner for Health and Human Services. So as a medical doctor, he's a seasoned expert. So if he's manning the Ministry of Health and they have set a target for the Benue State government to achieve that, we should hope they work within that target to achieve the result.
Okay, I get a newspaper. It's a weekly production, and it comes up every week. And this is the new edition of the program. For more details, let's go to our website. Of course, that is where you can also grab the current news that is happening on Gate News. If you just get to www.rgateradio.tv.com, maybe in a moment you'll find it displayed on your screen, and you get there to get more details of what we have said here. So the big picture of the whole of Gate newspaper, you can find it there. There you go. There's the story there. Court orders substituted service on Benue Pro panel. So the stories are there, and then you can find interesting articles there to write as well. So beautiful.
And on the top right-hand side, you can also click to listen to Agate Radio and watch Agate TV as well. Just wanted to add that.
Of course, that's very important. So just look at the top there, and then you can see. So thank you very much. So we'll go next, our next paper, and then see what we have we will begin to look at the paper is coming up very quickly. But before why the paper is coming, Agate newspaper, it's indeed making waves, and a lot of people getting their hands on them, getting their hands on it. So I think I saw a flash. Okay, that's fine. So Agate, the next paper is Vanguard, and I think Emmanuel will go with it.
Nigerians struggle as high drug prices fuel health crisis. That's the major headline on the newspaper. Above the mast, you can see tension increasing over rising food inflation. Rivers youth occupy local government headquarters as chairman tenure expires. Let's have this newspaper on the screen once more so that we can take all the stories, both those above the mast and those below. Edo Goba, an issue concerning the gubernatorial elections in Edo State as well. Over 2,000 pilgrims suffer heat stroke and exhaustion. And these are the issues from the Vanguard newspaper. Nathaniel, Nigerian struggle with high drug prices fuel health crisis.
This is really a major concern because the rising inflation and the general cost of living the Nigerians are grappling with. If you are still struggling with issues of high drug costs, it calls for a serious concern that the health of Nigerians somehow is getting endangered. But this is not really something to maybe because certain drug companies, major manufacturers have folded up, exited Nigeria, and the local production seem to be not enough, and the few that are available, given the high cost of living, general way of producing drugs in all, it has skyrocketed prices, and this calls for serious concern because if drugs are essential commodities, essential products, and if Nigerians are grappling with the challenge of high prices, then it means what our health sector is experiencing calls for serious concern, especially that if you go to our health facilities, most of the times the pharmacies are not stocked. As an inpatient, you are mandated to buy drugs in pharmacies out of the hospital. And if the price has gone up as high as what the papers are saying, fueling health crisis, then it means government needs to give serious attention to this to maybe help the local manufacturers to boost local production, especially with the exit of multinational drug manufacturing companies. But again, there's one story there that caught my attention. Tension in prisons over rising food inflation. That's above the nameplate there. 750 now inadequate to feed one inmate per day. That's to tell you that the challenge of food inflation is not only in the homes.
Yes.
It tells you that even in the prisons, it's a serious concern that is being grappled with. Food inflation, earlier on when we were talking about Agate newspaper, we talked about the issue of food insecurity. And if food inflation is rising so high, but it's really surprising that also the inmates are being affected in prisons. 750 now inadequate. I wonder if an average Nigerian in his or her home is able to feed 750 per day. But an inmate is feeding for 750 per day, and the prison authorities are saying it's inadequate to feed an inmate given the rising food inflation. But it speaks to the general hike in prices, the general cost of living every average Nigerian is grappling with. I would hope that the authorities should be able to curtail this. But let's go back to another story here. Local government autonomy, we will await a Supreme Court's decision, says the Senate. Does the Senate need to wait for the Supreme Court decision before they will push for local government autonomy, Mr. Emmanuel?
I think the whole thing has to do with the fact that the governors are not behind this local government autonomy business, and we know why. The joint account affair that all states sort of, it's like a common pool where we dip our hands for excess funding for state governments, not the local government councils that the funds are meant for. And as a result, you know, most senators and House of Rep members are loyal to their state governors, and there is a lot of lobbying in the background. And the presidency seems to be committed to ensuring the local government autonomy becomes a thing. So there is this forces at, you know, comings and goings once again.
Okay. You see, this issue of local government autonomy, you know, it has been an ongoing debate. Funny enough, even certain governors who said they have granted local government autonomy in their states, the suit that
Quote
is
and unquote.
instituted by the
They
federal
joined
government
against it.
or the attorney generals are there defending.
And we shall not name the state
So
governor.
the big question to ask is, what is the big masquerade around the local government autonomy?
Well, I was bold enough to mention it, the question of joint accounts.
Okay.
You know, when democracy returned in 1999, local governments had autonomy to a great degree. Now, you agree with me?
Absolutely.
And then someone somewhere in one state in Nigeria discovered that you can pool your local government council's accounts into one account and give or dispense what comes from the federal government at will, as at when you choose. And within a blink of an eye, twinkle of an eye, all state governors adopted this procedure. And from that moment till now, governors seem to say, we have given autonomy. But the real autonomy, Benjamin, you agree with me, comes with financial empowerment. Line charge direct from the Fiscal Mobilization Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission. You get my point?
Yes.
So these local governments, as long as they do not get the funds credited to them directly, they are not autonomous.
Which is what
That is a big masquerade.
The suit by the federal government is seeking to
Seeking.
enforce.
Okay.
But I think
Effective autonomy.
Nigerians in general
Effective autonomy.
Nigerians should get to know that if the federal government is pushing the local government autonomy for the third tier of government by way of taking the state governors to court, Nigerians should ask who is actually against local government autonomy.
Yeah,
And
that-
is it the
that-
government?
that's,
And why?
that's the
This is
question.
an issue
But
for us
another
to-
question, another thing here to look at that paper was, you mentioned is the tension in prisons over rising food inflation. Beyond just the news that tension in prison because of food, 750 can feed inmates.
An inmate.
So, why do we have so much? Look at the congestion in prison first. Why don't reduce
Well,
them first, and then maybe that could be a bit of creating some measure of accommodating.
Ben, this speaks to judicial reform. There are people in prison who are not imprisoned, and by that I mean there are inmates in prison who have been remanded in prison. Some have spent longer under remand than the sentence for the offense they have been even accused of. If eventually proven guilty, the sentencing maximum could be 10 years and have been in prison for 11, 12 years. If you have done any, religious prison evangelism or any non-governmental organization, community-based efforts to decongest prisons, you come across this sorry state of affairs.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, one of the stories that is not spoken about is the fact that those who are the correctional officers themselves benefit from the feeding allocated to, or the food allocated to prisoners. So now that things are the way they are, they will be more ravenous. So whatever the government has approved, pittance will be getting through to the prisoners. I speak on good account.
But
I will
I
not
think
reveal my sources.
That's also speak to the authorities, especially the judicial authorities, ensuring quick dispensation of justice.
Yeah,
so that we don't unnecessarily get
that's
prisons
another thing. That's
congested.
another thing to
Even
look at.
alternative dispute resolutions.
That's
so
another
that
thing.
people are not necessarily incarcerated or given
For minor
long,
offenses.
detention so as not to bring an, because if you don't have people in the correctional centers,
You won't
there'll
feed
be
them.
no need for feeding
feeding,
and
yeah.
rising tension.
Okay, let's go to the next paper, and let's see what we've got there. Let's see. Our next paper will definitely be interesting, of course. And it speaks of nothing more, but it's just security, from security to food to food. Okay, Daily Trust. Daily Trust is next. And what do you have to say about this, Nathaniel?
Lead by example, I can say. Hold the headline there with sacrifice. Lead by example, Nigerians reply Tinubu. And this stems from Tinubu's Salah, Eid al-Kabil message to Nigerians. It's a sacrifice. He called on Nigerians to sacrifice for the well-being of the country, and Nigerians are asking him to lead by example by sacrificing too. Tinubu didn't replace Murtala Mohammed well with Soyinka. That's federal government saying that, and also Daura Katsina hold Salah Dabal. And this is part of the Eid al-Kabir celebration. But majorly they ban up the bold headline there, sacrifice lead by example, Nigerians reply Tinubu. Beyond our president, our Nigerian leaders in general leading by example, by what they do, because every now and then we cry about high cost of governance, but you find our leaders from state governors to National Assembly members driving in long convoys that are virtually not carrying people inside, but Nigerians are grappling with just a liter of petrol. But here you have a leader who is having a long convoy, traveling a long journey with just fuel, burning for nothing. And Nigerians leading by example by our leaders, leading by example by cutting down the cost of governance to actually feel what Nigerians are going through. This is something for us to ponder about, and maybe the sacrifice, if we should make, Nigerians should make, this sacrifice should start with our leaders. Maybe I think
Okay.
that's what it stands for.
Okay, Emmanuel, you want to say something before we go on a short break?
Well, I am a Nigerian, and I would like my leaders to lead by example in all ramifications. Let their comings and goings reflect our real situation.
Okay, lead by example. Daily Trust is saying there. So let's see what to go. But we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, the newspaper headlines review continues. Don't go. What we'll do. Right, so welcome back to the program. And if you're just joining us, this is iGate Television, and the program is Newspaper Headlines Review. And we've looked at a lot of papers, and we'll continue. Our next paper to look at is Nigerian Tribune. And the Nigerian Tribune begins with this strong story, tension in Rivers over control of LG Council's tenure of chairman expires. And the kicker there says, the writer rather, youth storm LGA secretariats, asks chairman to vacate office, and police warn troublemakers. And you have above the nameplate, cholera, Nigeria must prevent spread to schools, says UNICEF. And just beside it, you have Nigeria's inflation ranks highest amongst Africa countries in May. And board appointments, APC members reject Abia nominees, right Tinubu. And Emmanuel Anat, what can you pick from this paper?
Well, the Rivers political brouhaha is getting more dramatic as the days go by. Local government chairmen's tenures about to expire or have expired, and already some youth are eager to drive them out of office. Sometimes politicians or public office holders play their hands too much. I mean, constitutionally, if someone's tenure expires, you don't need to do too much drama to pull the person out of office. But when you start doing some of these things, it looks premeditated, and it leads to unnecessary contentions that may not have even existed. But of course, we know why. There are two elephants in Rivers fighting, as far as I'm concerned, a father and a son. And we choose to be on the fence over such matters. Let's look at the cholera story. Schools are resuming from the public holidays, and we must make sure, those who are parents, to educate our children to wash their hands, and make sure that they engage in clean and hygienic actions that will curtail the spread of cholera. And please, like we were educated yesterday, Nat, you were on Perspectives on iGate Radio and TV as well, and your guest explained that if anyone is experiencing an episode of extreme diarrhea and is feeling weak, the person should go to the hospital. Do not seek to self-medicate. Yes. Look for help, because cholera is around us.
Absolutely. And again, we'll go back to Rivers, the tension in Rivers over control of local government. Council's chairman tenure expires. Ordinarily, there should be, is there any reason why Rivers should continue to be appearing to be boiling every now and then? The dust is yet to settle over the issue between Governor Fubara, Siminalayi Fubara, and his godfather, the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike. And here again we go with the control of local government, with the council chairman tenure experience. But again, it speaks to the issue of the local government autonomy we were talking about. Otherwise, if a council chairman's tenure is expiring, there should be a proper transition.
Do youth go to government house when governor's tenures expire?
To hold
before the tenure
expires.
Yes.
You need the youth to storm local government secretariats to ask the chairman to vacate. But I think this is where the federal government needs to really step up, because if the situation in Lagos, Rivers, is not handled properly, it will degenerate into an unnecessary crisis that will affect even the innocent people. Because as far as I'm concerned, the masquerades that are engaged in this fight, that's Governor Siminalayi Fubara and the Minister of the FCT and his loyalists, may be pushing for whatever agenda in Rivers, but the interest of the citizens of the Rivers people needs to be protected. Even the local government councils, they are there to serve the Rivers people. And we should hope that the proper thing is done. If the chairman's tenure have expired, and the governor is working towards a transition committee, he ought to have done that.
Yeah. Because
the situation in Rivers is getting out of hand if not properly handled.
Just imagine that the tenure of a governor is over.
Okay, and you have people
go to government house
to ask you to vacate.
And the governor says, no, I remain. I go nowhere.
I go nowhere.
Okay, so
again, you earlier mentioned the story on Nigeria's inflation ranking highest among African countries in May. That's according to research. Of course, this cause for concern is a source of worry for us and every average Nigerian, because the rising inflation, headline inflation, food inflation, and every essential commodity. We spoke about the the cost of drugs in the earlier papers that we talked about. All these are contributing factors to inflation.
Vanguard, to be precise.
And it's really worrying that if Nigeria is ranking high, as a giant, should be our record as a giant of Africa, having the highest inflation in May?
Not, there are some
in
things you
entire
don't want to
African
rank very
continent.
high in.
Characteristics of
Giant. There are some things you don't want to rank high in. There are some things you want to take last.
Yeah, you see.
Yeah,
So the
perhaps it
government
could
of
be.
Tinubu needs to really work with its economic team, led by the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Wale Edun, and their team. They really need to stem down the rise in inflation. And of course, the CBN Governor, Yemi Cardoso, needs to push for banking reforms that would stem down the rise in inflation so as to make life a bit more
yeah,
affordable.
well, because of time,
Nigerians.
we'll be running. Let's go to the next paper, and Punch is next. Let's see how it punches us here. The headline here says cholera. Of course, it's the one big headline coming up. Fear of school outbreak rises as pupils resume. And the rider says Lagos Emergency Committee meets UNICEF. Experts urge sanitation in schools. And above the nameplate, you have import duty. FG summons 80 private jet owners over operating papers. And beside it, you have a Senate to receive 2024 supplementary budget, July. And 137 federal institutions subscribed to student loan, that is NEL fund, sorry. And just below the bottom of the paper, you have presidency. Obi clash over new presidential jet. Inflation.
Yeah, we
New
expected
jet.
that. Maybe that's why the other headline in the Daily Trust was saying lead by example.
Okay.
Because
Yes.
when we are battling and arguing, Labour is saying 60, federal government is saying above 60,000 for workers, and Labour is demanding hundreds of thousands, and government officials come out to say we can't afford it. In the midst of all this, Ben, then the National Assembly is proposing 2 new private jets for the presidential fleet, and you wonder, there are aircrafts already in that fleet, not 1, not 2, not 3, a couple of some number of aircrafts, and then you're asking for 2 new. The other day, or let me say last year, it was a new yacht for the president.
Yes.
There is no direct waterway linking Abuja to the sea.
It's quite very it's unimaginable.
Yeah, and now we are talking about minimum wage, and you are saying we can't afford it. We are stalling the national anthem. It took just, how many days did it take for the national anthem to be passed into law? Can we apply the same energy with this new national minimum wage? As a common Nigerian that I am, I don't know about you, Nat. You look like you don't need the new national minimum wage.
Maybe before I should know, I can talk about the new national minimum wage. I may get to know the new national anthem before.
That's another condition, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, you see, the issue of presidential jet, Mr. Emmanuel and Ben, earlier on, if we should refer to that initial headline by Daily Trust, lead by example, sacrifice, the cost of governance. At the time, Nigerians are grappling with high cost of living. Doesn't mean the presidential fleet, there are no jets worthy enough to fly the president and his deputy, and the consideration is being made of a new presidential jet. And I'm happy that the former presidential candidate of Labour Party, Peter Obi, is speaking out vehemently against this. Obi may not be the face of Nigerians, but of course, as an opposition party leader in the country, I think he's speaking to a large extent to firm with the feelings of Nigerians, because if the presidency feels what Nigerians are feeling, or have an iota of what Nigerians are passing through at this time, the priority shouldn't be on presidential fleets. What about the cholera outbreak that the fear is gripping the entire country? Already the National Center for Disease Control has released statistics of over 30 states that are affected by the cholera outbreak. Why is the federal government not channeling energy to curtail this situation? especially with fears of it spreading to our schools. You know how our schools' environment are crowded. The Ministry of Health needs to wade in immediately to ensure that this situation is curtailed so as not to endanger our school kids.
Yeah, Obi said something here, and Tribune takes it, says, government plans to buy new jets demonstrates extreme insensitivity to citizens' struggles. Just what you said. Let's go to the next paper, and that's the Nation's newspaper. Let's see what that paper takes on. Nath, you go with that.
Okay, here we have the Nation and Emir crisis. Presidency dismisses Kwankwaso's team. And we have writers there. Ex-governor alleges a state of emergency plot. Police warn against Boeing Sanusi and security beef up around Main Palace. That's in Kano. The crisis of who is an emir in Kano is still brewing. And above the mast headline, I mean the mast nameplate there, you have Fubara replaces 23 Rivers Council buses. Governor directs civil servants to take charge. Okay, that's there in Rivers. Also, still above the nameplate, Tinubu for Ramaphosa's second term inauguration. Okay, the president may be joining leaders there in South Africa for the inauguration of the re-elected president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. Also, ALGON, that is the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, canvasses 4-year tenure for council ESCOs. How, Emmanuel, I wonder how this will go, especially 4-year tenure for local government councils, as ALGON is canvassing.
Well, you see, it speaks to the fact that even the local government council chairmen themselves are not comfortable with the amount of control that state governors have brought to bear. By the way, the funny thing is, there is no provision in the Constitution that empowers governors to do what they're doing. So what they did to the local governments is not founded or based on constitutional provisions. They simply just found a lacuna and swam into it and are refusing to come out of it. And because of the ambiguity over the status of local governments, it's now making it a bit technical. And that is why I think the federal government decided to, let's approach the Supreme Court to settle this once and for all. Now, ALGON are going ahead to say, hey guys, we are Oliver Twist. While you're working on funding us directly from the Federation account, we also want 4-year tenures so that they can equalize with governors. Maybe their elections can be held a year before governors are sworn in so that governors don't have an influence on who is.
You see, even there are agitations for INEC to also take over the conduct of local government elections. The truth is,
that is the implication of autonomy. That is the implication of autonomy.
Independent tier of government. So if you have the other tiers of government enjoying a constitutional term of 4 years, why not for the local government?
That's the ingredient of autonomy.
It's part of the magic.
Yeah.
So we hope
the Korean time.
So the situation in Kano over
Yeah.
the Emir crisis in Kano. You know, deposed Emir, now Ado Bayero, now deposed. Earlier on, former governor Ganduje.
It's a bit similar to what has happened to our national anthem.
The
new one becoming the old and the old.
Had deposed Emir Sanusi Lamido II, and when Governor Abba Yusuf came on board, he quashed all that former governor Abdullahi Ganduje did.
Who is now the chairman of the
chairman of the APC, deposed Ado Bayero. And since then, Kano has remained unstable over the situation. I'm wondering how it will pan out. Especially that the Emir Ado Bayero has also remained in Kano. And the now new Emir Sanusi Lamido, is also in Kano. And on Saturday, the papers indicated that they had separate Dobas. You're wondering what exactly is going on.
And they are brothers.
Yeah, there's enough.
They are brothers. They're from the same family. The emirate is run from one family. So for me as an observer, I am slow to comment on.
So now you see the former governor of that state, Kwankwaso, is alleging the federal government's plot to declare a state of emergency in Kano.
The question one will ask is, should we have political leaders deciding for traditional activities?
Well,
Because this is purely politics playing out.
yeah, and often when politics intermingles with the traditional institution, the outcomes are always similar to this. From the southeast, the southwest, to the south-south, all the way back to the north. And thank God for us in Benue, we have not had such extreme cases yet. However, as it stands, the entire scenario is that did Sanusi do anything, Emir Sanusi, I beg your pardon, did the Emir, the new Emir, do anything to deserve what the treatment he got when he was Emir first term? Should I say Emir first term?
And now he's back for second
term. And we hope that maybe it's for good.
Yes.
So did he do anything against the law? No. But the politicians were not comfortable with his criticism of what was happening. And most of the things he said when he was Emir first term before he was deposed have come to pass. The warnings he gave about inflation, the warnings he gave about monetary policies, they have to a large extent come to pass. So politicians, to your question, Ben, politicians and I think the government at the federal and state level should reform this system such that our traditional institution play the role of what we have the Lords in the UK play in the UK Parliament, so to speak.
Okay, let's go to our next paper, and which is this J, the state newspaper, carries this story. Rivers LG's crisis showdown looms, and armed group vows to sack council chairman. I'm so concerned, so disturbed with the word armed group vows to sack council chairman. You have just above that bold headline, you have Tinubu's reform meant to refocus economy for sustainable growth, says Kwara government. Many Nigerians will disagree with him. Pleads for patience from citizens. Emmanuel wants to say, but Kwara governor is saying, be patient, things will get better.
No, I actually, I want to shock you and maybe several persons who are viewing to support that view.
Okay.
That the policies, if you look at the intentions of the policies, is for sustainable growth. Remember, 8 years before the president came on board, we were borrowing to hand out money in the name of several poverty reduction and eradication schemes. And remember in the elections, Peter Obi did say that when you borrow to invest in infrastructure, you are not making a mistake. But when you are borrowing to dash people to eat, it's wrong. It's just like borrowing to buy a shoebi for a wedding. It's a liability on top of a liability to impress people that do not need to be impressed. But if you are borrowing to invest or at least build a house, it's an investment, it's equity, it's no longer debt. We have to pay back over 40% of the revenue we generate now goes to debt servicing. That is why it's becoming very difficult to govern. And I think the president is taking tough decisions. Not, you may choose to disagree, your face looks very, very strong.
Yeah, quickly just comment so that we can.
My worry is our leaders know where they have moved Nigerians to. So that they're asking for our patience and asking us to tolerate.
Why they are purchasing new planes?
Hardship?
Why they are purchasing new planes?
Nobody tolerates hardship. If there is any patience by any stretch of it, we have shown it. For over 1 year, an administration has come on board. This administration, it will interest you, that did not take over from a new political party. Tinubu as president, leading us now, was in the core government, not directly involved as an appointee, but he was in the same party with former President Muhammadu Buhari.
Popularly referred to as the leader of the party.
So whatever things that the Buhari government may not have gotten right, he is part of the blame. And now that he has come on board, Nigerians will expect that reforms to refocus economy for sustainable growth for how long? More than a year? We are grappling with hardship, and Nigerians, if there's any patience.
So you are saying that this administration should refocus our hunger?
Yes. If there is any patience, Nigerians have shown it. So Nigerians, we cannot be patient forever.
The question, my concern is, I am trying to imagine why the Kwara State governor is speaking for the president. That's one thing, one leg of my own view. He is the chairman of the Governors Forum. Yeah, so while speaking for the president, how much have you worked with the palliatives that he gave
the president
you?
gave.
Yeah, the governors.
And indeed, that's the other question.
That's one thing to
Ben,
look at.
Because
So,
at
don't
the
speak
federal
about the
level,
president.
the president has done a lot of things, which is what I was trying to say.
He has given
He gave
palliatives.
He gave a lot of money to governors, and even the monthly allocation that they share for some states has quadrupled. I know that a state like Niger State, the budget this year is close to 400 billion. In the past, it was less than half of that. And it's all as a result of the increment in federal allocation. Even look at the case of Benue. We now get 3, sometimes 4 times the allocation that used to come pre-Tinubu era. So we expect governors across. You can agree. You will agree with me that no state government is struggling to pay salaries now. Even Zamfara is paying salaries comfortably. So some state governors are already paying the new minimum wage that the federal government is proposing to labor.
So-
Some are already paying.
Yeah, so it is actually not in the place of the Kwara governor.
No.
To
You
be
should tell us
speaking-
what governors
yes,
are doing.
yeah, what they are doing with the palliatives. Okay, maybe our last paper is the Guardian newspaper. And what do we have the Guardian newspaper telling us here? Very quickly, okay. Of course, anxiety as 200% hike, scarcity hit hospitals, essential drug market. That's what we earlier discussed when we opened the Vanguard newspaper. And quite a number of things to pick up there, but out of stock, that is what they're saying. Just quickly so that we can go through. Lukman, Abdurazak, other score Tinubu's administration on economy promises. When we say, that's what we just said, you should not talk about president, you should talk about his own state. Air Force confirms killing 100 terrorists in Katsina raids. No day.
Who counted?
Who counted? Perhaps they did. Okay, so the stories that are here are not different from the ones we been saying. But is somebody interested in the cartoon?
Yeah, you know, the cartoon underneath the banner headline is an interesting cartoon. In walks the patient, bandaged, you know, with a swollen foot, the arm broken, eyes wide open, teeth in disorder, and, you know, having a conversation angrily with the doctor. You would agree with me that pharmacies and dispensaries...
Did you see what they wrote there? Doctors worry over unavailability of drugs with their patients.
Yes,
So to herbs.
Sometimes.
Maybe we should go back to the herbs.
Yes, you know, of course, in times of necessity and great need, we have to look at options. The Chinese, when they went through their own crunch periods in the late 60s and the 70s, they started looking at alternative medicine. So for us as well, there are remedies that are local that still work. I remember when, as a child, we would have 1 or 2 challenges and no one really visited the pharmacy that much. It was only reserved for very serious cases. But nowadays, a small issue, pain reliever, painkiller, we don't even have these remedies in and around us anymore. I was stung by a scorpion one time, and one of my cousins just ran into the bush and, you know, plucked some herbs. No incantations, nothing. Mixed it, cooked it over the fire, and rubbed over the spot, and I received great relief instantly. Instantly. So as we speak, we might just, Ben, it sounds funny, but we have no choice than to go back to our herbs.
Maybe that would be an alternative. Okay, quickly, let's see.
In any case, what Mr. Emmanuel may choose for her, but there are certain terminal ailments that Nigerians are managing purely with drugs. So if anxiety is rising over the high 200%,
Yeah.
essential drugs in the essential drug market, then it speaks to the deplorable state of our health sector. But again, it's a challenge for our local drug manufacturers, our pharmaceutical companies. Earlier on, I had called for even the government to give certain subsidies to
Tax waivers.
enable our tax waivers, to enable our local drug manufacturers to fill in the vacuum, because This is coming as a result of the exit of certain multinational drug manufacturing companies who were here and supporting the system. But as it is, if we have, if Nigerians are already facing hardship and in the hospitals where you should find succor when you are sick and the drugs are not available for even the healthcare professionals to attend to you, it really calls for concern. But the government needs to do something about this to wade into this very quickly to address this challenge.
Okay, and that is the last paper we're going to look at today, and time is also running out. So we most sincerely thank you for coming. But before we go, let me start with you, Emmanuel. What is your own final thoughts?
Well,
the headlines. Generally.
well, the thing for us as a nation is to remember that there is the law of actions and consequences. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. We had 8 years of nothingness in terms of proper economic planning. So what we are going through now is just a repercussion of the 8 years of a non-existent, robust policy for our economy. We borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. It's now time to pay back, and it will need some belt tightening. It will lead to some difficulty, but we hope that at the federal level, and especially at the state level, the governors do not engage in vanity projects, but rather projects that will alleviate the sufferings of the masses directly.
I love when you say the sufferings of the masses. Okay, let's hear from you.
Say
now.
no more.
You see, Ben, there are many things we need to get right in this country. If you could do all the papers we have scanned through, none seem to really speak hope into the average Nigerian.
In the present renewed hope agenda.
I must confess, my hope is not renewed. For me, I don't know about how the other Nigerians, but my hope seriously has not been renewed yet. Rather, my hope seems to be dampened from the economy to security to agriculture to education to so many things that we need to get right. The president may be calling for sacrifice, may be calling for patience, but already we are patient. We have been patient enough. Our leaders should get this country working in the right direction. 1 year is down already. Let the next years not be about politicking, because we should feel the impact of governance from this first year. Already, one may say, yes, the allocations are there, they have tripled, but the governors, it's a challenge on them to also apply these resources in the right way to directly affect Nigerians, because they are the closest people to citizens. The government, the federal government may allow the allocations to go out, but if the governors do not apply them to where it actually benefits an average Nigerian, it will still remain a mirage. So the governors have a task to ensure that the lives of citizens are given really a good facelift to ensure that we feed the dividends of democracy. A few days ago, we celebrated 25 years of uninterrupted democracy. Our lamentations shouldn't continue beyond.
Our lamentations should be interrupted.
25 years. So
Okay,
that's my take.
Okay, that's fine. And for me here, I would just say that security, one part of it is to let government be very, very focused on security. These days in Benue, in Makurdi precisely, the rising of pickpockets or snatching of phones and other gadgets, it's on the rise. So people, the security agents or agencies should wake up to their responsibilities and see that this is actually stopped. Otherwise, working after just barely after 6 or 7, you're not safe anymore. And if they can do something, then it will be fine. So from me, Benjamin Gutav, I wish you the very best of time, and we'll see you again some other time with the headlines on iGate TV. Bye-bye for now.